People ask, I want to change my speakers, but I want them to have bass. Is it really possible? Welcome to BTS Audio, your home for audio solution. Now, that is a topic that most people ask. We always change the speakers, but people want the speakers to reproduce bass output. Is it possible to get bass output from such, or do we really need such a speaker? So let us discuss the core aspects of speakers and their works. So the first thing is that we have these speakers, the normal, maybe the coaxial speakers that have an inbuilt tweeter, or the ones that we call the component speakers that don't have a tweeter, or sometimes people refer to them as woofers. But this is the thing. Speaker output is dependent on several things. One is the frequency response. Frequency response is a response where how many hertz will the speakers respond from this to this. That is the range. And also the power, the voice coil capability, the voice coil size, which will determine the resistance of the coil and also the maximum current it can draw on that coil. So that will also determine the power. So with speakers, most of them have a frequency response of between 30 hertz to around 20,000 hertz. So that means that this speaker will obviously reproduce higher frequencies, which are now, let's assume from 1000 hertz, that is vocals. Moving ahead up to tweeters level 4000, 6000, those are tweeters. So this speaker will not be limited. And how can you limit that? We can only limit it with a crossover setting, which in most radios you don't have a dedicated crossover which can do that limitation. And second of all, I want this to reproduce the bass. The lows, what we call the lows, are from 30 hertz, from actually 20 hertz to around 200 hertz. That is where the lows are produced. And in terms of bass, we normally cap it at around 80 hertz. So we range it from 32 hertz or 30 hertz up to 80 hertz. So I want this speaker to produce that low frequency. What will that mean? It means that I have to get more power into the coil. Getting more power into the coil, if the coil is small, it cannot run that kind of current. If the resistance is high, you can't run that kind of current. So you'll obviously destroy the coil. So when you try to push bass into the speakers, you will definitely spoil it, because it is not made for that output. Speakers are more for vocal reproduction, the fidelity capabilities of the speakers, the highs, you're able to feel that, you're able to hear the voices well. If we get the pro speakers, which we normally say they are more of the mid bass speakers, they are good, but the response frequency is between 80 hertz to around 350 hertz. So it is not still on the low end kind of sound. So those ones normally have a bigger voice coil, but they are also not meant for bass output. So considering that, you don't get bass from speakers. So if you want lows, you will definitely need a woofer kind of output, where you need the bass, the underseat or the rear powered subwoofers, or where you put an amplifier and a subwoofer with a big cabinet. So speakers don't produce bass. You will be matching it in the wrong way. Thank you, and see you in the next video.